In this example, we're given a stone that's thrown downward to initial velocity 44.1 meters per second with travel distance of s meters. So s is the distance that it travels, and t is the time in seconds. The stone is thrown downward 44.1, which is already in the formula, from a height of 254.8. How long would it take the stone to hit the ground? So we're going to look at our given function. And we're told that the stone is thrown from a height of 254.8. Well, since s is the height, we're going to call that 254.8. And we're going to find the time t for it to hit the ground. Now what that means is we need the equation equal to 0, because when it hits the ground it's equal to 0. So we're going to subtract 254.8 from both sides, which just means we're moving it over. We get 0 equals 4.9 t squared plus 44.1 t minus 254.8. And now this is a quadratic equation, which means we're going to use the quadratic formula, which is x equals, or in this case, it's t equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, which means that this is our a, this is our b, and this is our c. So watch how I do this. Watch how I substitute it into the formula. That's a little slanted. I don't want it to be a little slanted. Do you want it to be a little slanted? I don't want it to be a little slanted. Still slanted. Oh well. I tried. I just don't know what I'm doing. That's just terrible. Slow down. Square. I did it again. Is that frustrating for you as it is for me? Well, b squared minus 4 ac. And this is all over 2a. Now we're going to throw in our b, which is 44.1. It goes there. It goes there. A is 4.9. A is 4.9. And C is negative 254.8. Notice that sign. So now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to do the easy stuff first. 2 times 4.9 is 9.8, plus or minus. And then we'll type in all this in the calculator. That's why I have it here. 44.1 squared minus 4 times 4.9. You can use parentheses too if you want to. Times negative 254.8. Enter. And we get 6938.89. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to type this in my calculator all at once. You may have to do it in separate steps. I could actually have typed this whole thing in my calculator at once, but some people would have gotten lost, so I didn't want to do it that way, so I'm just going to do it like this. And this isn't asking you for any nice numbers by any means at all. In fact, if you look at the answer choices, that's why I have the answer choices here. They're nice numbers, because it says around the near second, so that means we can just go ahead and type it all in. And we'll do that with our calculator. So I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to put the whole numerator in parentheses, negative 44.1 plus the square root of 6938.89. Gonna move it over a little bit. Parentheses. divided by 9.8, enter. And we get 4 for the plus part. We can go up. Actually, I guess we have to hit second, enter, to bring it back up to where we can actually also do the minus sign part, because we got to separate the plus and the minus. And we get negative 13. Since this is a t time, you can't have a negative time, so the answer is 4 seconds, which should be one of our choices. And there it is. That's what you're done. When you read this problem, you'll notice that it says a ball is thrown upward, and it's going to come down, and it's going to hit the ground. So when it hits the ground, what's its height? The height. Well, the y value represents the height. And so when it hits the ground, it's at 0. So what you're basically doing is you're taking this function, which represents the height, and you're asked to find the time t when it hits the ground. What that means is you're asked to take this equation and set it equal to 0 and solve for t. And if you notice, since it's t squared, it's quadratic, which means we're going to use the quadratic formula. And so what we want to do is substitute our a, b, and c. A is negative 16, b is 64, and c is positive 960. If you don't know why, mathematicians are not very creative people. Your alphabet begins with A, B, C. That's why you have to put in correct order. Everything makes sense once you have in correct order, which it already was. So now when I do this, I rewrite the formula with empty parentheses. And then I throw in the numbers. B is 64. A is negative 16. And C is 960. That's terrible. Okay, ducky. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to simplify some of this, even though I'm really tempted to type it all in at once with my graphing calculator. I did the easy stuff first. That's negative 64, and 2 times negative 16 is negative 32. And then I'm going to take out my graphing calculator and type in the bottom. Might as well use parentheses. Doesn't hurt anything. It's safer. It's safer. It's safer. And we're at that big old ugly number underneath. You can find out most times with word problems, you can use a decimal answer. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this. Watch this. I'm going to put the whole numerator in parentheses, negative 64. I'm doing this step now. Negative 64 plus the square root of 65536. I'm going to use our arrow key to bring that out. Close parentheses, because I want the whole numerator inside parentheses, divided by negative 32. I'm doing the plus part first. And we get negative 6. That's not good, by the way. Now I'm going to do the minus part first. So to do that, I just hit second, enter. It brings it back up. That way I can just move it over and change that plus to a minus, then hit enter. And we get 10. Can't have negative time. So the answer is 10. I don't remember the units. What is it? 10 seconds? Yeah. So after 10 seconds, the ball hits the ground. And that's what we're doing. Yep. On this example, you have a bunch of information. T is seconds. and h is feet, that's the height. It eventually strikes the ground. How long will it take for the ball to hit the ground? Well, when something hits the ground, its height is what? Well, the height at ground level is 0. So we're solving this equation equal to 0, and this is a quadratic equation. So that means we're going to use a quadratic formula, which is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now I like to write this using not having any variables in it. That's what I always do, no matter what. Now, since this is already in quadratic form, a is in front of the t squared, which is negative 16, b is in front of the t, and c is the constant. So I just throw in the numbers. B is 96, B is 96. A is negative 16, A is negative 16, and C is 256. Now I am going to use my graphing calculator to help me out a little bit. Before I do that, I'm going to clean up the easy stuff first. That's a negative 96, that's a negative 32, plus or minus. I'm going to type in what's under the square root. So we have 96 squared minus 4 times negative 16 times 256. We get 25,600. Now when I type this in on my graphing calculator, I'm going to type in the numerator for. I'm actually going to do it all at once. I could actually type all that in once. So just go ahead and type in the whole thing. I'm going to put the numerator in parentheses. Negative 96. Do the plus part first. Second, square root 25,600. Notice I had to hit the arrow key to bring the flasher outside the square root. Divided by negative 32. We get negative 2. That's not good. I can type in the whole thing again, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to hit second enter, which brings back what I just typed, and that way I can replace that plus with that minus to find the second answer, which is 8. Since we're dealing with seconds, you can't have negative seconds, so the answer is 8 seconds. Now, the other question, I don't know if you noticed that or not, but it takes 8 seconds to hit the ground. 8 seconds to hit ground, which means that should be 8. Now, I want us to provide tick marks with the appropriate numbers. So if that's 8, we got 1, 2, 3, we got 4 of them. So you take 8 divided by 4, you get 2. So we're counting by 2. 2, 4, 6, 8. So there's your tick marks, counting by 2's. So it takes 8 seconds to hit the ground. That's the most important part of the problem.